When we met last year, many said that containing the violence was impossible. A year later, high-profile terrorist attacks are down, civilian deaths are down, sectarian killings are down. When we met last year, militia extremists, some armed and trained by Iran, were wreaking havoc in large areas of Iraq. A year later, coalition and Iraqi forces have killed or captured hundreds of militia fighters. And Iraqis of all backgrounds increasingly realize that defeating these militia fighters is critical to the future of their country. When we met last year, al-Qaeda had sanctuaries in many areas of Iraq, and their leaders had just offered American forces safe passage out of the country. Today, it is al-Qaeda that is searching for safe passage. They have been driven from many of the strongholds they once held, and over the past year, we've captured or killed thousands of extremists in Iraq, including hundreds of key al-Qaeda leaders and operatives. Last month, Osama bin Laden released a tape in which he railed against Iraqi tribal leaders who have turned on al-Qaeda and admitted that coalition forces are growing stronger in Iraq. Ladies and gentlemen, some may deny the surge is working, but among the terrorists, there is no doubt. Al-Qaeda is on the run in Iraq, and this enemy will be defeated.
For more on Iraq, I'm joined now by two guests here in New York. Dahr Jamail, independent journalist, reported from Iraq extensively since the U.S. invasion of 2003. He publishes his reports on a blog called DahrJamailIraq.com, author of Beyond the Green Zone, Dispatches from an Unembedded Journalist in Occupied Iraq. And joining me in Washington, D.C., Raed Jarrar, Iraqi blogger, political analyst. His blog, Raed in the Middle, is at raedinthemiddle.blogspot.com, Iraq consultant for the American Friends Service Committee. Let's begin with you, Raed. Your response to President Bush's last State of the Union when it comes to Iraq and Iran.
I didn't see anything new in the president's address. It seems like a continuation of the U.S. foreign policy that is based on intervention and militarism, and a continuation of the U.S. strategy in Iraq that now has been proven that nothing will change it. When the situation when the number of casualties is higher, there is one reason that is given to the public to continue staying in Iraq and to leave permanent bases. When the number of casualties is lower, there is another reason that is given to the public to leave permanent bases in Iraq and to continue the occupation. So whatever the condition on the ground was, whatever the reaction from the Iraqi public was, this administration's foreign policy is exactly the same. It doesn't change based on realities or facts. So I didn't see anything new in that, and we didn't see anything new on Iran as well. We saw the same threats despite the recent report showing that Iran stopped its nuclear weapons program since the year 2003. We hear exactly the same rhetoric because, as I mentioned, the strategies of this administration will not be changed by the realities, and these excuses that they give will change from time to time. They just try to address the public opinion and change their different excuses to maintain the same interventionist foreign policy.
Dahr Jamail, it's pretty much universally accepted in the corporate media. This surge has worked. We speak just after 5 U.S. soldiers were killed in Mosul. But what about that?
Well, the surge, and what's very interesting, too, is not only do we have a U.S. surge, according to Mr. Bush, we have an Iraqi surge, two Iraqi surges, actually, the first of which he mentioned in his talk last night, the concerned citizens or the awakening groups. Well, it's really interesting that the same time last year, as Mr. Bush was happily doing during his speech, comparing where were we last year to this year, well, last year, these same people, these concerned local citizens, according to the U.S. military, were called al-Qaeda or insurgents or terrorists. And now that there's 80,000 of them on the U.S. payroll, they're concerned citizens and they're an Iraqi surge. And these same people, as we look at the situation on the ground, this is causing deep deepening of the political divisions in the country. The U.S.-backed Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki has been vehemently opposed to this concerned citizens group backed by the U.S. military in Iraq. These people, most of which are former resistance fighters, because they're now a threat to the Iraqi government forces. So that's causing huge problems on the ground in Iraq today. And if we look at the situation, the military recently announced within the last month that there was a 7-fold increase in the use of air power last year. So these are some of the reasons why right now there are fewer U.S. troops dying, but in reality is they're paying off resistance fighters to stand down. And Muqtada al-Sadr, who commands the largest militia in the country, has his militia on stand down until next month, where that stand down might end and things would change dramatically.
Why are they standing down now?
He put them on stand down almost 6 months ago to basically re-vet people coming in. His militia had been infiltrated by what he called foreign elements. There were people posing as militiamen, going out and committing atrocities, etc. And I think there are other political reasons, obviously, as well, why it's on stand down. But that's about to end.
Raed Jarrar, explain who these people are who are on the U.S. payroll, these citizens groups, militias.
The new citizens from Al-Anbar and other provinces in the west and middle of Iraq is nothing new. The U.S. has trained and supported private militias and governmental militias during the last few years, mostly from the Shiites and from the Kurds. So there were Shiites and Kurdish militias either working as a part of the governmental forces or independently from the governmental forces, who have been trained and funded and supported and protected by the U.S. Forces in Iraq during the last few years. Now the U.S. added a new sectarian force that is mainly Sunni to its payroll, a new sectarian militia. So now we have 3 major sectarian militias, a Sunni, a Shiite, and the Kurdish militias, that are trained and funded by the U.S., whether they were inside or outside the government. And these 3 major militias are actually a part of the bigger U.S. policy of supporting sectarian leaders in Iraq who are sectarianly and ethnically cleansing the country and cutting it and partitioning it demographically. Now, the new group of tribal leaders who allied themselves with the U.S., their numbers may reach to up to 70 or 80,000 mercenaries or private militias, will not change this U.S. foreign policy in Iraq, or the U.S. policy in Iraq of supporting a minority of Iraqis, whether they were Sunnis or Shiites or Kurds, against the majority of other Sunnis, other Shiites, and other Kurds who are nationalists, who are for keeping the country united and ending any type of foreign intervention. So there is nothing new about the support other than finding new partners in Al-Anbar who are willing to take U.S. governmental money and oppress and kill their own people, and support the foreign powers. So if this policy continues, we will continue seeing the number of Iraqi internally displaced people increasing, and the ongoing project of splitting Iraq into 3 confederations going, funded with U.S. taxpayers' money and with U.S. protection in Iraq.
Dahr Jamail, the presidential candidates and their views on Iraq. Today is the Florida primary for the Republicans. John McCain saying we could be there for 100 years, and going after Governor Romney for at one point suggesting, though Romney fiercely denies this, that maybe there should be a timetable.
There is nothing in U.S. policy to indicate that there's going to be any change in the policy in Iraq, meaning total immediate withdrawal or even a relatively gradual withdrawal. When we look at either Republican or Democratic mainstream presidential candidates, there's nobody out there that's in favor of this. Nobody's talking about this. I mean, it's a very interesting phenomena where, of course, Bush, of course, not mentioning it last night either, but we just have to look at the hard facts on the ground. There are, but right now, between 6 and 12 permanent U.S. military bases either constructed or being constructed. We have the largest embassy on the planet in Baghdad that's 2/3 the area of the National Mall in Washington.